Hi, this is Midge Ure from Ultravox, and you're listening to Ollie Zaxa.
Hallo, hier ist wieder euer Olli Sachse und ich spreche heute mit einer Legende aus dem musikalischen Bereich, nämlich mit Midge Ure von Visage, Ultravox und natürlich auch als Solokünstler. Hello, Midge.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you, very fine. Midge, you were born in Scotland in 1953 and began very early to play guitar, is that right?
Oh, very, very much so, yes. I started playing guitar at 10 years old.
And then you had some musical experiences.
I did. Musicians are funny people. As soon as you find someone else at school with a guitar, you immediately connect with them, and that, before you know it, becomes a band.
And then at the end of the 70s, you raised or founded, or however, the mysterious band Visage. Is that right?
It is, yes. My friend and drummer from my band, the Rich Kids, decided we wanted to put together a band of favorite musicians, and this band became Visage, with Steve Strange fronting it.
Why didn't you take the part of the singer?
Well, I wanted to learn more about music production, and I was more interested in that side of things. I was also still the singer with the Rich Kids, so I didn't want to confuse people by having my voice on something else as well. And Steve was the perfect guy to front Visage.
Although it was at the end of the 70s, the song Fade to Grey dominated, let's say, the whole 80s. You wrote the song, or you wrote the lyrics?
I wrote the lyrics and the melody when I was putting the Visage album together. We found that we didn't have enough songs. We hadn't written enough, and I took what was the idea for Fade to Grey, the musical idea, and wrote the melody and the lyrics and turned it into what it is now.
Even the French lyrics?
Well, the French lyrics, luckily, Rusty's girlfriend at the time was from Luxembourg, and she spoke beautiful French, and I asked her if she could just translate the verse text. One man in a lonely platform, one case sitting by his side, and she just translated that, and she had this beautiful, soft, very endearing voice, and we just recorded her translating it.
The lyrics of Fade to Grey sound very dark. What are they really about?
It's about exactly that. It's about seeing people standing next to you at the bus stop or in a line somewhere or a train station, where is exactly where this was, and you see this person sitting with a case, and you wonder why they're there and where are they going. It's like the start of a story. It's like the start of a novel. This person could be traveling away, could be running away from something, it could be running towards something. So the idea of this film noir imagery was quite important at the time.
But Visage, as far as I know, only released two albums.
I did the first two albums. I produced the first two albums, and then concentrated on just getting on with Ultravox. But there were some other recordings afterwards, but I didn't have anything to do with those.
And then afterwards, you became the new singer of Ultravox? You replaced John Vox.
Well, I joined Ultravox because of Visage, because the keyboard player in Ultravox, Billy Curry, Ultravox was still in existence. He was part of, Billy Curry was part of Visage. And through working on the Visage project, I saw Ultravox break up, fall apart, be dropped by the record label. And they asked me if I, because we had been working together, if I would consider joining Ultravox, which I loved the idea of.
If I think of Vienna, it was a song that I think at the time then wasn't really made for the charts. How did you get it on to release it?
Uh, Luck, absolute luck. We knew when we were writing and recording the Vienna album, we knew the track, the song Vienna was something special. It was interesting, but it was too long to be a single. It was too dark. It was too slow. It speeds up. It's, synthesizer, electronic drums, piano, and a viola. And it's a very odd combination. But sometimes when people get a chance to hear something different, they like it. And that's exactly what happened. Against all the odds, someone played it on national radio, and lots of people picked up the telephones and asked what this was, and it just spread that way.
And it's a great song, and it goes on with hymn and dancing with tears in my eyes and something like this. Did you write all the songs, or did Ultravox write the songs?
With Ultravox, a bit like Lennon and McCartney, it didn't really matter who wrote what. We divided it all equal ways. Vienna is a classic example of all four people in Ultravox contributing equal amounts. Vienna wouldn't be Vienna without that bass drum heartbeat, do 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 do, or the synthesizer bass, do 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 do. All of those elements came together to create that one song. Over the years, it was different. I'd write a lot of it, or Billy would write a lot of it, but we still called it an Ultravox song.
And apart from Ultravox, you in the 80s did the Live Aid concerts and wrote the song together with Bob Geldorf, I think, Do They Know It's Christmas?
Yeah, yeah, we did. We wanted to do something to try and raise a little bit of money to help people who were affected by the famine in Ethiopia in 1984. And of course, Do They Know It's Christmas became much, much, much bigger than we ever thought it would, and that led on to Live Aid, and then 20 years later it led on to Live 8. So yeah, it's still going on.
Do you know how many millions you raised with all that?
I wouldn't be able to put an exact figure on it because and it took us a while to realize this, because it's a Christmas song. Do They Know It's Christmas? It comes out every Christmas. It's played every Christmas. It's on compilation CDs. It's on movie soundtracks. And Bob and I gave the songwriting royalties to the Band Aid Trust, the trustees who look after it all. So it changes year by year, depending on how often that song gets played. But it's somewhere in the, I don't know, 200 million euro mark.
Wow, congratulations. How
Thank you.
did you get the idea to do all this?
Oh, that was Geldorf. He was just a bully. I'd known Bob for quite a while, and I spoke to him on the telephone. I was standing next to his then girlfriend doing a TV show in England, and she handed me the phone saying, "It's Bob, he wants to talk to you." And he had just seen the footage of the famine, the news footage of the famine on television, and said, "I want to do something. Will you help?" And we got together a couple of days later and decided the only contribution we could make realistically was to write a song and get as many of our friends to come along and help us do this, because we needed their fans. We needed their fan base. We needed Wham's fan base and George Michael's fan base and Boy George's fan base and all of that stuff. And it was them who turned it into this huge thing.
Yeah, and if I remember it right, you were in the 80s and in the 90s and today. If you say, or if you look at all the music business, how can you produce music today and get money from it? Is that possible?
It's very difficult. I wouldn't like to be starting in the music industry right now, because you have to be so much more than a musician. You have to be brilliant at social media. You have to market yourself. You have to be able to produce your own music, because the record labels don't just sign you and give you money anymore. So you have to be your own manager, your own agent. You have to be absolutely everything. So it's very difficult. People still listen to and consume music, but they don't really pay for it. So it's a very odd industry. We all need music, We don't all need a car, We don't all need a television, but we need music, because that's what feeds us. But we have a generation that just don't want to pay for it. So it's very difficult. I'm fortunate that my hardcore fans were there in the 80s and the 90s, and have followed me all the way through. There are new fans because of social media, because of music I've made that has been on games or in movie soundtracks or whatever. So I'm very fortunate. But to start out now would be a really difficult thing to do.
And after, or meanwhile, Ultravox, you became a solo artist. Your most favorite song was If I Was. Did Ultravox split because you were a solo artist, or were there other reasons?
I think there were other reasons. We had a lot of success with Ultravox, and I, because of Live Aid and Band Aid, I had to move away from the band for 2 years. All my time was eaten up doing other things, and when I got back to the band, really looking forward to coming in and writing a new record, we were a very different band. Like anything, like any relationship, if you leave your partner for 2 years and then come back and expect it to be exactly as it was the day you left, it's not going to work. It's different. We grow up, we grow apart. And when we did the last album, it was very obvious we were all pulling in different directions. Some of it was orchestral, some of it was almost folk, some of it was with brass sections, and it was just a mishmash. Maybe if we had stuck with it and got through that album, we would have pulled back together again. Strangely, 25 years later, we got together and made a new album, and it was a really good record. We obviously still had that spark. We still had that desire to do it. So that was a nice way to leave it.
I'm from Germany, and I'm a big fan of the producer Conny Plank. You worked with him together. How did that
I
come?
loved Connie. Yes, we worked when I joined Ultravox. The band were talking about who might produce the album that we were about to write, and I said it has to be Connie. I've never met the man, and I was desperate to work with him. I wanted to know how he did things, and he did things very differently from other record producers or engineers. So we got Connie to do the Vienna album, and then we ended up with the follow-up album, Rage in Eden. We went to Connie's studio just outside Neunkirchen and spent 3 months in his studio with no songs. We wrote everything in his studio as an experiment, and it was the most amazing 3 months that I could ever hope for. He was a wonderful man, brilliant engineer, and he thought in sound. He thought everything, all his ideas were in his head in sound, and he created those sounds with the tools that he had. It's amazing.
In the 90s, you released some music soundtracks, some movie soundtracks.
I did. I've always been interested in movie soundtracks. I've always loved the instrumental music, always. Just about, I think every album I've ever put out has an instrumental track or two on there. So yeah, I've done a few little movies. See, Ultravox should have done what Tangerine Dream did and moved into the world of film soundtracks because Ultravox was very cinematic. It was very orchestral in its way, the way the music was structured. It was big, it was atmosphere, it was haunting. So I think we would have been good doing film music, but it's not something that everyone was interested in.
Apart from music, do you have any other interests, let's say other hobbies like collecting cars or breeding dogs or something like this?
I used to have a collection of cars, but that's what happens when you make some money. You buy old things, you buy everything that you ever thought you'd really want, and then you find out that it doesn't change anything. So I used to collect old cars, but I don't do that now. I love taking photographs. I still enjoy cooking now and again because it's a very different creative process cooking something, and unlike making music, you get to taste the food straight away. Whereas with music, you have to wait, get an album sleeve, and you have to wait for a release date, and you have to wait before people get to hear it. At least with food, people tell you straight away whether it's good or not.
You're now at the beginning of your 70s. How do you stay so fit and how do you manage it to go on an USA tour?
I love it, and I know that's a cliched thing to say. You know, I'm still enthused by it. I think music and anything that involves public appearance, I think the audiences can tell whether you mean it or not. You know, I remember taking my very young daughters years ago to the theatre, a Christmas theatre, and the main character in this Christmas play was a well-known actor, and he was dreadful because he hadn't learned his lines, and he thought it was below him, he shouldn't be doing it or whatever. And my children didn't understand why they didn't enjoy it, but I did. And I think an audience isn't stupid. An audience can tell whether you're doing it for the wrong reasons or doing it for the right reasons. And I just love it. I still enjoy it. I'm still working on booking dates for 2026 we're looking at now. So as long as I wake up in the morning, I'm going to be out there doing it.
Will there be any new releases concerning music from you or just concerts?
No, I've been working on new material, but I've been working on it for a long time because I've been doing so many concerts. The new album is taking quite a while, and I find it slightly more difficult now to write songs that I think I haven't done before. So I'm very aware that I have a style and a sound and a way of doing things. And if I keep doing it the same way, eventually it's going to sound like the stuff that I wrote 30 years ago. So I've got to keep trying to find new ways of doing that. So what I've done the last couple of years is take a break from songwriting, and I've written and recorded an entire instrumental album, almost like a film soundtrack. And that was interesting for me because it didn't involve writing text. It didn't involve all of that stuff. It was purely about the music. So now that I've done that, I'm now back to writing songs. So I've just got to mix it up a little bit instead of doing the same thing every day over and over. You have to challenge yourself.
If you look at your concert, uh, the public, is this a three generation public or are they all 50 above?
Oh no, I think because people discover your music in different ways. Certainly, young people uh, don't hear your music on the radio. You know, they won't listen to golden oldie stations. They're not interested in that. But they do hear bits of what you do in movies and soundtracks for games. And if they find something they like, they send it to each other. So it's like a little invisible network, an underground network. In fact, on Spotify, you can see what your most streamed piece of music is as an artist. And the most streamed piece of music I've got it by millions is a cover of a David Bowie song that I did back in the early 80s, which ended up on a video game, Metal Gear Solid. And young kids playing this game fell in love with the song. And then they go and find you. And then they're exposed to a whole world of music they didn't know existed. So you do get the hardcore fans who've been there since they saw you when they were 10 or whatever, 12, the first time they saw Ultravox. And they're still come, but so do generations below them. And that's an amazing thing.
So in the next years, there will be no retirement of Midge Ure.
Not unless I wake up one morning and can't do it anymore, or I lose my voice, or whatever. Unless something stops me, I have no plans on stopping. I want to be like Connie Plank. I want to be there playing right up until the day you'd fall over, and that's the way it should be. You're a musician, What one of the questions you get as you get older when you're doing interviews is, are you thinking of retiring? And the answer is, retire to do what? Most people retire from a job that they don't really like to do something they do like. I love what I do. What am I going to find that's better than this? And the answer is nothing. So
Then a question that I think you've answered a million times. Your original name is James Ure. How comes Midge?
when I joined when I left my engineering apprenticeship when I was 18 to join a full-time band. They were a well-known band in Scotland, my home country at the time. And when I joined the band, it was run by two brothers. And one of the brothers was Jim, and my name was Jim. And he said, well, we can't have two. It's too confusing. So you're now Midge, which is Jim reversed, M-I-J, and we just spelt it differently.
Okay, then we'll see you in the next years live on stage around the world. Are there any countries you would like to play?
I haven't done much in the Far East. I've never played in India because I know that's a territory that's opening up to in a big way to Western music. You know what? It doesn't really matter where it is you're playing. You don't get an opportunity to see the country very much when you're touring, but the response you get from audiences is different, and that's the interesting thing. Like I'm going to South Africa in a couple of weeks' time. I've never been to Durban, so I'm looking forward to going to Durban because I've never been there. But equally so, I'm looking forward to coming to Germany again, and I've been there since the mid 1970s. I mean, touring Germany. It's the process of going and performing for people and getting that feedback that you get that is specifically from that territory, and that still excites me.
In your past, you've worked together with, let's say, 100 of other musicians. Is there today any musician you would like to work with? Let's say a duet with Taylor Swift?
I think it would be an odd coupling because I'm what, 170 something or other centimeters, and she's got to be 200. She's big. She's a tall girl. Every collaboration I've done in the past with musicians or vocalists or whatever has been because it's reciprocal, because they wanted to do it as well. You know, it's not because it was put together by a record label or a management company or whatever. It was done because we respect each other. There are certain musicians that I'd like to do. I mean, Sigur Rós from Iceland. I think they're not new, but they've been around a long time. But they do really interesting music, textural ambient stuff. That would be a nice pairing. I'd like to do something with Max Richter as well, who's a neoclassical musician. There are many good people out there that, if the opportunity arose and the circumstances were right, it would be good. But I don't have a list. I don't have a list of people that I'm going to go chasing and go, you need to work with me,
Okay, Mitch, then thank you very much for all these informations we get from you. And I wish you very much luck for the future and health and strength.
Thank you very much, Ollie. It's been a pleasure.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.